Just going to make this pretty short, 30,000 foot view. Just want to get into, what's a roundabout and kind of where things have been going with it and avoid some of the confusion. And I think one key point I want to make, out of this 5 or 7 minute time is a couple things. Roundabouts involve change. And that's a message you need to bring to the public. You need to bring it to your councils especially, and I'll give you some reasons why. But the change is worth it. And none of us like change, but the change is worth it because roundabouts save lives. And that's why I, as a county engineer formerly, went into private practice about 15 years ago. I used to do safety audits, and I found that traffic signals, the toolbox, just wasn't deep enough. So I got into roundabouts, and I have a group of about 14 people that's all we do. We do it all over North America. And we recently opened up a group here in North Dallas. And the second message is that project level outreach is not enough. We're trying to impress on a society the benefits of a new device that requires a change in the way we drive and the way we interact with drivers. And when we stitch together project level outreach, it's still not enough. A lot of us aren't reaching our councils. A lot of us that work with councils aren't reaching the senior staff in our organization. So when we go to project level outreach on, to sell a roundabout to the public, and we don't have our council behind us or commissioners, I can tell you stories about what that looks like. It's not pretty. But what is a roundabout? Let's dispel some of the myths. It's a compact circular intersection. Traffic yields as it enters. It's not an old non-conforming rotary. It's not an arrival point. It's not a bluebonnet circle. It's not a Weatherford circle. It's a compact way of alternating the flow of traffic with higher efficiency and lower speeds. So inherently, it's going to be a safer device. Lots of sites around the US for the last 15, 20 years at least. And in Texas, this map's dotted with some of the TxDOT sites, but in around the Dallas area, Fort Worth, Dallas, you can see that there's quite a growth in interest in roundabouts on the part of agencies. They save on signal maintenance costs, they reduce fatal crashes, reduce injuries by up to 85, 90%. In some cases, the multi-lanes don't reduce property damage type crashes, but we're working on the education side of that too. So we've got myths, and this is where this issue of change comes in, because you see things jump up in the newspapers, and you see the way the press handles these things, and then there's the freight industry. Some of the states, like Oregon, had trouble advancing their roundabout program because they didn't engage the freight industry. And they are well connected, and they have a lot of influence. And if you impede their progress, you can imagine what might happen. So, and then there's the navigation issues, the wayfinding, how do the public deal with roundabouts, and you can see the rhetoric that develops in people's minds. So we look at things like misconceptions, and you'll encounter all these. They're the same as traffic circles. No, they're not. Roundabouts require too much land. Not always. They require less link mid-block right away, even though they might have a larger footprint in the intersection. And the public doesn't always want to embrace it. Why? Because it means change, and we don't like change that much. Snow plows, fire trucks, depending on what part of the country you live in, buses, semis, can't use roundabouts. That's a myth. We don't have that problem. We can even get wind turbines and large oversized vehicles through. Pedestrians and bicycles, jury's still out on that. Statistics show us that they're safer for pedestrians, but there's a sense of insecurity over the use of roundabouts on the part of pedestrians. What do we translate that into? More education. If they're proving to be safer, we simply need to convey that message to the public. And are they not better for older adults? Again, it's a bit of a myth because the safety statistics tell us that they're safer. But there's this discomfort over judging a gap. Looking left and trying to figure out whether it's safe to go is not an easy thing to do. The driver adaptability in roundabouts is challenging. We need to acknowledge that, take that seriously, and work with the public. So again, another myth. A roundabout's like another circular intersection, isn't it? No, it's not. But with things like rotaries and even signal-controlled circles and neighborhood traffic calming, which we had through the 90s, in the last 10 years, speed bumps, traffic circles that just control speed. The modern roundabout's kind of a subset because yes, it is circular, but it's a much more sophisticated means of alternating the flow of traffic. much more efficient at alternating the flow of traffic than traffic signals in most cases, even up to volumes of 5,000 vehicles per hour. And it has been done in many other places. So why do we think it's still an attractive intersection design form? It increases safety. Everything about roundabouts tells us that they're safer intersections for the past 20 years. Operationally, higher capacities, in most cases better than signals. It handles complicated geometry, 5 legs, 6 legs, multi-lane approaches. It lends itself to complete streets. You know, we have a slightly wider footprint at the intersection, but when you need to road diet, or you want to soak up some of that extra pavement and still provide capacity where it counts, the roundabout helps you there. Life cycle costs, no signal maintenance, reduced cost of crashes, it's going to be cheaper in the long term. And we had our asset management folks talking to us about that. That's where this all ties together. Sustainable infrastructure, sustainable safety. And of course, quality of life. Who doesn't like a nicely beautified intersection, you know, with a feature in the middle or something that's aesthetically pleasing and not too crash prone? So what's happening around the country? There's national areas of emphasis. I've ranked them, but just this background photo, you know, that's an interchange. It's up in the area of Green Bay on Highway 41. 4 intersections in 1,200 feet, has 3-lane entries. The wayfinding signs are overhead. It's developed as a system. It looks like a system of roundabouts, and it was looked at with simulation. It was looked at with discrete models and then developed. It's one of the lowest crash corridors in the state of Wisconsin, where my main office is, and we've got a very low crash incidence in the 3 years it's been open. So there are examples of where you can do this, and this saved on travel time because you don't have to stop every time the signal changes, and there's no issue with coordination. There's no issue with left turns on the bridge in a wider bridge cross section, so it was a more cost-effective solution. But just going to the national area, sorry? That's 1,200 feet for all 4. Yeah, all 4 combined. The national areas of emphasis. I started out talking about change, and the success of any traffic scheme, at least our human factors textbook will tell us this, the success of any traffic scheme is dependent on 2 things, the quality of the design and the adaptability of the driver. And we've licked the quality of the design issue. All over the country, we've got guides, policy, and every bit of that is in place, and we're producing good designs. But we're still lacking in area-wide outreach. And it can start at the state level, but agencies in this room, counties, cities, COG, we can all contribute to the improvement of public awareness. Pedestrian accessibility, with the U.S. Access Board, still some challenges with that. Which devices? I'd like to think the pedestrian could behave more assertively. Instead of standing there looking at my iPhone, I could actually, you know, lower my hand and point my intention to cross. That's been shown to be beneficial. Accommodating oversized, overweight vehicles in the freight. We need to engage them proactively. Right-sizing roundabouts. Our early experience was, let's design them for 20 years of traffic demand. We're finding that all that does is create more pavement space for people to make mistakes. So we tend to be kind of keeping them compact initially and then expanding them later. Federal Highways supports that. They'll actually give us that increment of funding to expand a roundabout later. They also don't want that safety problem, and they want simplicity. Open them, make them simple to drive. We're working on detailed design plans and preferences that agencies have and specifications as a design community. Those are the things that tend to come along with experience. Get subject matter expertise involved in the project as early as possible. The strategic components of the design, the number of lanes, the circle location, the circle size and alignment of approaches, that's 80% of the problem. If you don't get that right, no amount of details and quality is going to improve the operating condition. You simply have to work hard at the strategy. And then go for continuous improvement. Research things, get feedback. Like anything new, we can't just put them into service and walk away. We've got to recycle our knowledge. So these things work really well. Track your statistics on how well they're working. Publicize their success. You'll get licensed to do another one if the last one was successful. And not just anecdotally, collect the crash data and collect the congestion relief information. And plan your implementation strategy strategically. It needs to be top down. Don't let the project manager or the project engineer sell roundabouts to your community. Your elected officials need to do this because they're the ones who give authority to the engineers who design these things. And I've been to public meetings where the engineer is trying to carry the weight of the authority to use a roundabout on his shoulders, her shoulders, and they just don't get that. And the public will just attack that and say, that's just another great flavor of the month for an engineer. Who gave you authority to do that? So we get the mayor to introduce us at public meetings. Statewide is very important. We're really struggling on that level, engaging the freight industry. If you're going to select sites, a roundabout must solve a problem. And someone started out saying, we don't need them everywhere. Absolutely. We need them only where they solve a problem. Why? That's wise use of infrastructure dollars. We're demonstrating to the public that we're making good decisions. So we need to be traceable and transparent in our approach. And then I talked about the other two at the bottom, subject matter expertise and right-sizing roundabouts.